All right, today we're truly delving into one of the Middle East's most enduring and volatile rivalries, the simmering conflict between Iran and Israel.
Hmm.
For decades, this was largely, a shadow war, proxies, covert operations.
Kept behind the scenes mostly.
Exactly.
Mm.
But as our sources show, it's recently escalated into direct confrontations, and that threatens regional stability in, well, entirely new ways. Our mission in this deep dive is to cut through that complexity, to explore the key drivers and the crucial historical context of this decades-long rivalry, so you can get truly well-informed.
And what's particularly striking when you look at the material is just how deeply rooted this struggle is. It's
Also
complex,
complex.
a weave of ideological divides, geopolitical rivalries, and profound strategic fears. There's really no simple path to resolution in sight. We'll be drawing on historical context and the most recent developments right up to June 2025 to give you a clear, nuanced understanding of what's truly at stake here.
Okay, let's wind the clock back a bit then, because what often gets lost in the current animosity
Yeah.
is that before 1979, Iran and Israel actually had, well, surprisingly cooperative ties.
Right, under the Shah, the Pahlavi dynasty.
Yeah, pro-Western Iran. They were kind of united by shared interests against common Arab adversaries, and of course the looming shadow of Soviet influence back then.
It's almost jarring to consider that history now, isn't it?
It really is, especially given the fierce animosity we see today. It truly underscores how quickly geopolitics can just shift.
Absolutely. And what makes this transformation so profound is how completely the Islamic Revolution, led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, just inverted those established regional dynamics.
Right.
Iran didn't just change its government, it fundamentally transformed into an Islamic republic. And that came with a fiercely anti-Zionist ideology,
So they started seeing Israel as, what, an illegitimate state.
pretty much. An illegitimate state and a Western colonial outpost oppressing Palestinians. That's the kind of framing.
And when you hear rhetoric from figures like Khomeini and later Mahmoud Ahmadinejad actually calling for Israel's destruction.
Yeah, that language solidified Israel's perception of Iran as nothing less than an existential threat.
So that ideological clash isn't just talk.
No, not at all. It fundamentally precludes easy diplomatic solutions, you see. It shapes a conflict where neither side can easily concede without feeling they've betrayed their core identity. It's deep.
So once Iran redefined itself so radically,
Yeah.
how did it then begin to project this new anti-Zionist ideology onto the regional stage? We've seen them build what they call an axis of resistance. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, it's essentially a network of regional proxies, heavily armed and funded by Iran,
Okay.
and it's designed to extend its influence and critically counter Israel and Western interests.
And who are the main players in this axis?
The key groups are Hezbollah in Lebanon, which, interestingly, formed during Israel's 1982 invasion of Lebanon.
Right, that connection is important.
Very. Then you have Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and more recently, the Houthis down in Yemen.
And Iran provides them with.
Weapons, training, funds, significant support. You see the impact, for instance, in Hezbollah's role in major attacks, like the 2006 Lebanon War.
And the recent events.
And, of course, more recently, Iran's sustained support for Hamas directly fueled the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. That killed over 1,200 people and, well, sparked the ongoing Gaza war we're still seeing unfold.
And Israel naturally responds. They have their own counter strategy, right?
Yeah.
Airstrikes, assassinations.
Yes, targeted assassinations, covert operations. They're constantly hitting Iranian assets and proxies, particularly in places like Syria and Lebanon.
All aimed at curbing that regional influence.
Exactly, trying to push back against that network.
But while those covert ops are critical for Israel's immediate security, what truly casts the longest shadow over its strategic thinking, what remains its greatest fear, that's Iran's nuclear program, isn't it?
Indeed, that's the big one. Iran has consistently insisted its program is purely peaceful for energy. But that claim contrasts sharply with reports from bodies like the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. Their June 2025 report, which our sources detail pretty clearly,
What did it say?
it confirmed Iran had enriched uranium up to 60% purity. Now, that's certainly enough material for potentially 9 nuclear bombs.
9.
And that's a clear violation of non-proliferation agreements, the whole international framework designed to prevent the spread of nukes.
And what makes this even more complex?
Well, what's particularly complex here is that Israel, which maintains an undeclared nuclear arsenal of its own.
Right, the policy of ambiguity.
Exactly. Israel views Iran's progress as an absolute red line. They've taken increasingly aggressive steps to counter the threat. It's not just a flashpoint, it's a profound strategic paradox, really. Well, Israel's own undeclared arsenal arguably creates the very security dilemma that kind of incentivizes Iran's pursuit in the first place, locking both nations into this dangerous reciprocal escalation.
And we saw a major manifestation of that just recently, June 13th, 2025. Israel launches Operation Rising Lion.
Big strikes.
Striking Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, other military sites too. They cited intelligence about Iran's alleged weaponization efforts.
Though Iran predictably denies those claims.
Of course.
Right.
But this kind of preemptive strike really highlights the volatile nature of this whole nuclear issue.
It absolutely does. And the crucial question it raises is how much this nuclear ambition fundamentally drives Israel's preemptive strategy now. Is it pushing them beyond just counter-proxy operations into direct, overt action against sovereign Iranian territory? Seems like it.
Yeah, and beyond these specific flashpoints like the nuclear program, there's also just this broader geopolitical rivalry, isn't there? A struggle for regional dominance.
Oh, for sure. The collapse of the Soviet Union, the weakening of Iraq after the Gulf War, that really shifted the regional balance of power.
Created a vacuum.
Exactly. A vacuum that Iran and Israel have both been eager to fill. And that turned them into direct rivals in a way they maybe weren't before.
So Iran's trying to expand its influence. Syria, Lebanon, Yemen.
Oh, precisely. Directly challenging Israel and its key ally, the United States.
And conversely, Israel, backed heavily by U.S. military aid, and now these quiet alliances with some Arab states like Saudi Arabia.
They're absolutely determined to maintain their military edge and strategic dominance.
And this dynamic has fueled just a relentless cycle of tit-for-tat attacks.
It really has, from Israel's strikes on Iranian targets in Syria to Iran's missile barrages on Israel.
And speaking of those barrages, the past year and a half has seen a dramatic shift, hasn't it? More towards direct warfare.
That's a critical observation, yes. Yeah. We've truly seen this recent shift from the shadows, from the proxy warfare, to these much more direct, overt confrontations between the two nations themselves.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, the examples are stark, and they really illuminate the shift. April 1st, 2024. Israel bombs Iran's consulate in Damascus, kills senior Iranian commanders.
A major escalation.
Huge. Iran retaliates with an unprecedented barrage over 300 drones and missiles targeting Israel.
Then later the year.
Then the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, July 31st, 2024, widely attributed to Israel.
Right.
That prompted yet another significant Iranian missile attack on October 1st, 2024. This time, over 180 missiles.
And then the June 2025 strikes we just mentioned.
Exactly. The cycle intensified further. Israel's strikes on Iran's nuclear and military sites killed over 220 people, tragically, met by immediate Iranian counterstrikes, killing 24 in Israel. If you zoom out, this accelerating cycle of direct retaliation just underscores the extreme and, frankly, increasingly dangerous volatility of this conflict.
It feels like the guardrails are coming off.
It certainly looks that way sometimes.
And central to Iran's anti-Israel stance, kind of underpinning so much of its rhetoric and strategy, is its unwavering support for the Palestinian cause.
That's absolutely right. Since '79, Iran has framed its opposition as a defense of broader Muslim and Arab rights.
And that means actively backing groups like Hamas.
Yes, backing them to challenge Israel's policies in Gaza and the West Bank. The Gaza war, which intensified so dramatically since October 2023, has only amplified Iran's rhetoric.
We hear accusations of Israeli genocide constantly.
It's become a constant refrain. Now, from Israel's perspective, Iran's backing of Palestinian militants is seen as a direct existential security threat.
Which they use to justify their military operations.
Correct. So this isn't just some side issue. The Palestinian question remains a potent symbol and a deeply emotional driver of the broader conflict. It constantly reignites tensions.
So what does this all mean for you as we try to make sense of this incredibly complex dynamic? What we've seen in this deep dive is that the Iran-Israel conflict is just a profoundly volatile mix.
It really is.
Deep-seated ideology, these interconnected proxy wars, existential nuclear fears, and this relentless struggle for regional power.
It's all tangled together.
Yeah, deeply entrenched. Fueled by mutual distrust, fundamentally opposing ideologies, and, well, urgent strategic imperatives for both sides.
And while the hope for peace often seems distant, maybe even out of reach, it's worth noting there have been, glimmers, tiny ones perhaps.
Like what?
Well, Iran did propose a comprehensive peace deal way back in 2003, and some recent statements have hinted it might reciprocate if Israel halts attacks. Hard to know how serious those are, but
And there are other factors.
there are also potential openings, maybe, like the ongoing Arab normalization efforts with Israel, the Abraham Accords, and so on, and the internal economic pressures Iran faces. These could, theoretically, create space for de-escalation.
Was always a but.
But here's the crucial question, right? How much do domestic politics, particularly in Israel, under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government and the U.S.'s unwavering support for Israel, how much do those factors actively complicate any significant de-escalation efforts?
Yeah, that's key. And it's important to maintain a truly balanced perspective here. While Iran's aggressive rhetoric and its use of proxy warfare are often highlighted.
And rightly so, there are major factors.
Absolutely. But our sources also make clear that Israel's actions, like its strikes on sovereign nations, its undeclared nuclear status, its history of targeted assassinations, these also contribute significantly to escalating tensions.
It's a two-way street of escalation in many ways.
For sure. And the U.S.'s role, providing Israel with billions in military aid, frequently vetoing UN resolutions critical of Israel, you could argue that emboldens Israel's hardline stance, potentially prolonging the conflict rather than de-escalating it.
That's certainly an argument presented in some of the analyses, yeah. It makes finding off-ramps more difficult.
Hmm.
Ultimately, both sides' narratives, Israel's self-defense and Iran's resistance, while deeply felt by their populations.
They often overshadow the human cost.
Exactly, the immense human toll. Thousands have been killed, and regional stability really hangs by a thread.
So what's the way forward? Is there one?
Well, without robust diplomatic intervention, maybe mediated by global powers or perhaps even new regional actors, this grim cycle of violence just risks further escalation. It could pull in even more of the broader Middle East.
Scary thought.
It is. Understanding the intricate roots of this conflict, as we've tried to do today, isn't just academic. It's crucial for even beginning to envision a path toward de-escalation, however distant that might seem right now.